Well, I don't have, I'll use my remote as my thing, okay?
Go for it.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
I'm ready.
All right. I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the Board of Education Warren City School District meeting. Today is Tuesday, April the 21st, 2020. The time is 6:03 p.m. This is a regular meeting. And this meeting is a meeting of the Warren City Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. With that, if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I have a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, and this is, let's see here. Okay, so we've called to order. If we could please have a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Faulkner,
Here.
Mr. Falley,
Here.
Mrs. Patterson,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Present.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Here, everyone is present. There is no need for item number 3, so we'll move on to item number 4, which is communications. Mr. Shiro, do you have anything?
Yes, a couple communications this evening. The first one I would like to share of a great opportunity that we found out from our colleagues at Mahoning County Educational Service Center, where as we had the ability to purchase at a great price some pallets of books to give away for our students. So I'd like to thank Ms. Barrow and State and Federal Programs for this purchase. And in the next couple of weeks, each one of our pre-K through 8 buildings is going to receive 2 pallets of books. One will be a mixed pallet of Rick Riordan and studies, and the second will be mixed Disney pallet of books. So we will give these away to our students with our assignments that they give for their reading pleasure and to keep the spirit of reading alive during this challenging time that we're striving to provide educational services to them. The second communication I wanted to provide is there was an article in the Tribune this weekend regarding our food service programs that was published. I want to thank all of our staff members across the district for doing such a diligent job on keeping the feeding of our students as a high priority. I think on average, breakfast and lunch per week is well over 20,000, closer to 25,000 meals a week are being provided, and the district is receiving reimbursement back from the USDA. So that program is in place. And I also prepared some responses for Mr. Smith earlier this evening. Before I came here, he had several questions regarding the continued closure of school. So, you know, as a communication, I know all of you are aware that the governor has declared traditional school closed for the remainder of the year, and that online and distance learning programs shall continue. He did put the question mark out there regarding, you know, what would be the guidance for the start or fall of next school year. That's undetermined from his office, but from what we hear, all of our things that we'll be looking at and exploring would include distance learning opportunities. So, you know, we may be operating differently than we do as traditional school now, or we could be operating like we are now or somewhere in the middle. So I did prepare that and provide that to Mr. Smith. Also, one of his questions I'd like to, you know, share with the board was in regards to graduation and other class of 2020 events. So I want to let the board know, you know, as I am sharing with Mr. Smith, and I know lots of community members have great interest in this, but Mr. Capers and I have been meeting multiple times every week regarding the class of 2020 and our seniors. Several plans and options have been discussed in regards to graduation, prom, and other events along the way. In regards to graduation, which seems to be, you know, the culmination of a senior year, multiple scenarios remain in play. You know, we are waiting further guidance regarding social distancing and this expectation from our governor and what his plans are even for the reopening of Ohio in, you know, starting on May 1st and beyond. So, you know, we understand that this is a very important time for our seniors and their families and their friends, and it's a very emotional time, but we are having multiple scenarios in place. We plan on hearing from the governor in the next week or so as far as what his expectations are, and that'll guide our decisions if we're able to do something sooner or later. But we're definitely going to do something, and we've talked everything from doing the best traditional program we can if we're permitted to a totally virtual scenario like the colleges and universities are talking about at Kent and YSU. So I want everyone to know that we are definitely on it, but we don't want to get ahead of the governor and what he is declaring for the state. So I want that communication, loud and clear. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy, to answer them at this time. But I just don't want to get into specifics.
Okay.
Okay.
We are. I mean, we met today. We met on Friday. Dante and I have been remaining very close in our communications on this, and other topics as well, obviously.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, with that,
Thank you very much.
that concludes my communications, unless there's anything further.
Anybody else? I think we're good. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 5, and I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Faulkner.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes.
Oh,
You got, okay, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson,
yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item number 6, treasurer's report.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot for you today, but a couple things I wanted to point out. It was decided, the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation approved the dividend to Ohio employers, and it looks like we'll be receiving 100% of our 2018 premium paid, which for us equals $345,396. So
Wow.
that'll be helpful as we muddle through these budget changes.
Right.
And-
Every penny helps.
Right.
Mhm.
And so in just working through the 5-year forecast, which I'll be presenting out to you at the end of May, obviously there's some difficulty and uncertainty as how to project out in years ahead. But there's a couple nice webinars that I have that I'm going to be attending, sitting through. One is coming this Friday. It's dealing with potential state funding reductions and how that will forecast out through uncertainty. So we haven't gotten any information in terms of what the state budget is going to look like, whether or not we will receive reduced funding. In rumors that are going around, if there is any, it could possibly be hitting the wellness funding that we received. So that would be the best case scenario.
Okay.
And other than that, the auditor of state has also organized a school treasurer virtual roundtable that will be on April 28th. So that's statewide, and it'll be interesting to share ideas and resources and see what information we can gain from treasurers across the state. So it's nice to see everybody stepping up and together to work through these uncertainties.
Right.
Mhm.
But that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, thank you, Karen. And we'll move on to item number 7, the superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report, I keep it very informal. I just want to share with the board that we have continued our investment in purchasing laptops. At this time, we have sought quotes and bids so that we could have devices for all students in grades 3, 4, and 5 for the start of next school year. Our approach will be different than that of the 6-12 students. The students in 3-5 will not be on Microsoft Office 365 because we recognize that is, typically a higher learning platform and may not be as student friendly. Our hopes would be, if we are in a traditional school setting in some format, that our plans would be to work with our teachers and our students in working together in a classroom environment first, for several weeks before releasing those devices to go home, so that the efficiency on both the educator and the student and support of the families would be stronger and in place, especially given the age of those students. So, I do want to thank all those involved in trying to seek those bids and to continue moving our online learning platform. Also want to share that we have been working to monitor the student engagement levels for all of our students in K through 12, and there are variances across the district. One of our initial measures is what students have engaged at all in any way, shape, or form. Our second measure is which of our students are engaged to what we call an adequate level, meaning if it was to be given a letter grade C or higher, in that kind of status. And so those are where the numbers vary, because now we're looking at, quality, quantity, competency in any student work. And the student work is just starting to come in the last week or so to a real level of fidelity. I ask parents to be patient. We are working on providing interims to our students. We are going to allow for work assignments to be made up. We are going to be letting off of the gas pedal a little bit with the number of assignments as we work into the last 3 weeks of the school year, starting in May. So I believe at Harding we already reduced one assignment per week, and we're going to continue doing that so we could get the students caught up in their grades and their assignments, and so that they have a stronger finish to the year. So those are some of the things that we are working on in curriculum instruction and in technology and with our principals. And I do want to say that our student engagement is increasing, and we are having a very diligent blitz, for lack of better words, for this week in reaching out to families. And again, we can't control every factor in this, and some things are outside of our sphere of influence. But I do believe that, we have a very decent amount of families that have engaged to this point. We are pushing, this is the last 5 weeks of the school year, starting yesterday, so we are putting a very strong push with all of our employees. And I want that message to be clear.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 8, the Board of Education committee reports. Under athletics, Mr. Nicholson, do you have anything for us?
I do have a lot of things. Obviously, the football video board project is going to be on hold until further notice. Softball field, tennis courts also are going to be delayed until the governor determines that they're not considered non-essential businesses. So, we're kind of probably 50% done on both those projects.
Okay.
So as soon as the governor goes through his phases, our people will get back out there and start finalizing those projects. The Mollenkoff Eastside Stands inspection was conducted on April 16th, and we're still waiting on the results. The winter wasn't that bad, so cross your fingers that, it's still pretty stable. I recently went to a Zoom meeting last week and visited the Northeast Ohio athletic directors. They range from all the way to Sandusky, Ohio, as far south as the Canton area, all the way to the PA border. We had a get together, and we're talking about a lot of items. I wanted to share some of those items with you because, it's interesting to hear everybody's points of view, what they're considering, what they're pre-planning, what they're, forecasting for the future. And some of the things that we talked about, obviously, spring sports was a possibility on 5-4. Or kind of ended everything yesterday. He's still saying there's no contact for the coaches through May 3rd, and we'll visit it again at that time. Use of outside facilities was brought up by the athletic directors. A lot of schools are finding their kids are getting into the stadium, they're on their tracks, they're doing this and that. And it was kind of interesting listening to some of the solutions that they have. And some of them ranged from, they have SROs that are still on the clock getting paid. And so they have their SROs kind of cruising around to their different campuses and their buildings, and kind of, if they see anybody, they kind of shoo them away. We also had Kenston's athletic director that was having a major problem with them getting into the stadium. He basically put an edict out to the coaches and the parents and the players that if you're on the premises and we identify you as going to be a 1-game suspension to start the fall season. He said it was drastic, but it's been very effective. Other things we've been discussing was spring coaching supplementals. Obviously, you know, a lot of these coaches start in January, February, doing conditioning. So that, you know, the season being canceled, you know, we're getting opinions on what do you think, you know, the pay should be, and the pay range from a third to a half to a full. Steve, Karen, and I have been in discussions on what our feelings are about what we want to do with our spring supplementals payments for our coaches. So that was discussed. Awards and recognitions are brought up. Every senior is going to receive a letter this year. Some schools are bringing up the concept that if a junior this year letters next year, that they want to double back on the letter. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but it's interesting to hear their perspective. Summer activities, most schools cancel. If the governor canceled like he did yesterday, this meeting was prior to that, they said if the governor cancels, well, they don't want anything going on at their school facilities all summer. That includes any type of youth football camps, anything. They majority of them said shut it down. Fall eligibility. Obviously, some schools might have ended their 9 weeks to third grading period. We've just, with the school and everything that we've got going on, our grades are going to be based on the last 9 weeks. I put a mass email out to all the families and the players, letting them know that Warren City Schools is using the full 9-week grading period, and you need to, and I kind of told them in a nice way, you need to get this work completed. It's unacceptable. You need to get going and complete this work. I've seen some of the percentages, and I actually got a number of one of the kids, and it made a personal call telling him, let's go. The next day, he got some grades up. So now there is a chance that the Ohio High School Athletic Association could waive some of these eligibility things. I mean, with the situations we're in, they've even talked about it may be difficult for kids to get physicals if we're still in a shutdown mode.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, you may see them kind of stray from their policies and do maybe what's in the best interest of the kids. I think if they waive the 5 credits required the 9 weeks prior, I can understand that. You know, the physical thing would probably be a little scary and liability wise be a concern, but obviously, you know, they've got lawyers that they'll be discussing this with and health experts. So, you know, I trust Jerry Snodgrass will do the best thing for everybody involved. Fall sports, the question keeps coming up. You know, what's fall sports going to look? We have no idea. You know, no one knows what this virus is going to do, how it's going to react, when's it going to come to an end. So, you know, one of the things they've talked about is a possibility of no spectators at games. They've talked about, you know, think about a football game. You've got concessions. You probably can't have concessions. You know, the band sitting together playing instruments with the saliva spray, you know, being emitted from instruments, and then the spacing it together. There's so many factors that we have to look into that, you know, it's something that we're at least looking into and trying to get it.
Oh. Is he there?
He's froze.
Mm-hmm.
Can we unfreeze him?
Is that me?
Can we thaw him out?
Yeah.
You're back.
Oh, good. So I have a Zoom meeting tomorrow with the AAC meeting, and we're going to discuss some things. And on Thursday, we're going back again to have a meeting with the Northeast Ohio Athletic Directors. I think there's 50 or 60 ADs that are going to attend that meeting. You know, some of the things that we've discussed is how are we going to celebrate some of our senior athletes and stuff. And I'm going to start posting their names on a daily basis, a couple kids a day. Put a bio out there on what they enjoy doing, what their favorite whatever is, and you know, post that on Twitter, post it on our WGH website.
You mean our spring? This is for our spring athletes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to somehow, you know, recognize these young men and women, you know, via social media or whatever, and put something nice together. Dante Capers and I have had conversations on, you know, some things that we can do. We've been kind of watching what some of the other school districts have done. Last night, that state nationwide initiative, turning the lights on at 8:20, went over really well. I actually drove by, and one of my concerns was it may gather too many people here. But I thought everybody that attended
They did.
They did.
They maintained their distance, even driving.
Yeah.
Even driving, they were.
Yeah, Patty, the only thing that scared me is when the fireworks started going off, and I was like, okay, are those firecrackers? So I thought it was nice that, you know, people, they want to get back to normalcy. And I think
Yeah.
last week gave them a little bit, and it was nice. It actually was real nice. So I think that's the list of things that I have. Obviously, the athletic council meeting for Thursday will not happen.
Right.
Steve rolling his eyes. I don't have him on my screen, but I figured he's rolling his eyes.
He probably is.
All right, so that's.
But thank you
basically-
very much.
Any
Thank you,
questions?
Ben.
That was full of information. Thank you for giving us all those updates.
You're welcome.
Okay, so financial advisory, I don't think there's anything.
No advice.
No, right, no advice. Just if they're sending us money, take it, right?
Yep.
We gladly accept. Board policies and guidelines,
No report.
legislative liaison. I don't have a report other than every day, Monday through Saturday at 2:00, I take
Yeah.
my lunch and I watch the governor's press.
Yes.
And that pretty
Yeah, I
much
do
brings
too.
me up to date with everything that's going on in the state, so.
Yeah, I do the same.
TCTC, Bob, I think you do have something to tell us.
Yeah, the announcement that there will be no completion ceremonies,
Mm-hmm.
ECTC, that was announced, and, you know, that's just, situation, but, you know, our students have all done so well and all of this, but, you know, under the circumstances, that's probably the best decision because they come from everywhere, so.
Right, right.
And we've got students who've just done a fantastic job, as all of you know. I tried to report each month. We've done really well, but
Yeah,
and then the other thing I will report is that we have good numbers depending on what happens, you know,
for the
next
fall?
year, for the fall, that we do have excellent numbers of students going into, you know, the programs, the medical programs, and particularly those kinds of programs. So just want you to know that, but things are well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, do we have anything under old business? No. Okay, anything under new business? Okay, we'll move on to item 1, on page 3, under treasurer's recommendations, Mr. Fowley.
It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the March 2020 and April 2020 board minutes be approved as submitted. Be it resolved under the provisions of ORC 3313.26, the reading of the minutes of the following board meetings be waived and the minutes be approved. The regular meeting on March 10th and the special meeting on April 3rd.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 4, item 2, Mr. Walker, and these do not need to be read in their entirety.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're like,
Monthly
yep.
financial statement, exactly. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding March 2020 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during March 2020, Exhibit A, pages 25 and 26, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 6, item 3, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Yes, the revised appropriation budget is recommended the resolution listed below for revised appropriation budget A be approved as submitted.
I second.
Okay, any questions? And call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 7, item 1, Mrs. Patterson, please.
Under the superintendent's recommendations, agreements, contracts, and or leases, It is recommended the resolution listed below entering into agreements, contracts, and/or leases A through D be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries.
And
On page 9, item 2, Mr. Fowley, please.
Ohio State testing procedure. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the following in state testing procedures for the 2020 and the 2021 school year be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions on this motion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 10, item 3, Mr. Walker, please.
Yes. Adopt contingency plan for district learning for the 2019-2020 school year. Whereas Ohio Revised Code 3313.48 mandates that a school district must be open for instruction with pupils in attendance for a minimum number of hours each school year. And whereas the Ohio Department of Education further requires that the educational programs operated by the school board be open for instruction each school year for a minimum of 910 hours for students in grades kindergarten through 6 and 1,001 hours for students in grades 7 through 12. And whereas Revised Code 3313.482 authorizes the board to adopt a plan that permits students to make up and complete hours of instruction via online remote learning. And in the event that the schools are closed to students for a disease epidemic or other reasons, and the superintendent has developed a plan for such remote learning. And whereas House Bill 197/2020, which was enacted on March 27, 2020, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic health emergency, authorizes the Board of Education of the Warren City School District, the board, to adopt a plan to provide for online learning opportunities for students to make up, complete, an unlimited number of hours in lieu of attendance on days when buildings are not open to students during the 2019-2020 school year, in compliance with any order issued by the Ohio Director of Health and/or local Board of Health. And whereas the board has developed a contingency plan in accordance with Revised Code 3313.482, under which district students will make up any time missed through online instruction, remote learning, that may cause the district to fall below the minimum number of hours of instruction required by section 3313.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and board policy. And whereas the board further authorized licensed staff, including intervention specialists, to provide instructional support and related services within the scope of their practice by electronic delivery method or telehealth communications to district students, including students who receive special education and related services under an individualized education plan or Section 504 services plan, while the Director of Health's order to close schools to students remains in effect. And whereas the board desires to adopt said plan, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Warren City School District.
That's good.
Section 1, you want me to read all this? I can.
If you'd like to, you may, if you want to continue, please go ahead. This is like the longest one we have.
Yes,
But
this
I mean, I
is.
think it's probably important because it's
It is.
an
It is
unusual
important.
situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of new stuff, so it's probably good.
Yeah, so go ahead.
It is. I agree. So section
I
1.
appreciate.
No problem. Section 1, I forgot my water though. Pursuant to Revised Code 3313.482 and House Bill 197/2020, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the following plan to allow students enrolled in Warren City Schools access and complete online remote learning sessions in order to fulfill the required number of days, hours during the 2019-2020 school year. A, each teacher shall develop a sufficient number of lessons equal to or greater than the amount of instructional time required by Ohio Revised Code 3313.48. Lessons shall be posted for each course that was scheduled while the school was closed. B, teachers will submit the lessons to the designated administrator for approval on a weekly basis. These designated administrators will certify that the lessons are equal to or greater than the amount of instructional time required by Ohio Revised Code 331.48. C, as soon as practicable, the appropriate administrator will direct staff about how to make lessons available through a district-approved website or other technology portal. D, the teacher-designated administrator will be responsible for posting the lessons online. The teacher shall designate the order in which the lessons are to be posted on the web portal or website, if another employee is responsible for posting them on the teacher's behalf. E, teachers will regularly assess the progress of students and will update or replace such lessons as necessary throughout the remainder of the school year based on the results of the assessments. F, each student enrolled in a course for which a lesson or assignment is posted shall be granted a week from the date of posting to complete the lesson's assignment. If the student does not complete the lesson assignment within this time period, the student may receive an incomplete or failing grade unless the student provides a sufficient reason for the teacher justifying why they failed to complete the lesson assignment. G, for students who experience difficulty accessing online material or who do not have access to a computer, students shall be permitted to complete the posted lessons after the deadline provided they communicate their concern with teacher or building principal. Students utilizing this option will be given to the end of the fourth grading period to complete such lessons assignments. If the student does not complete the lesson assignment within this time period, the student will receive a failing grade unless the student provides a sufficient reason to the teacher justifying why they failed to complete it. H, the Board of Education hereby authorizes blizzard bags as needed, which are paper copies of the lessons assignments posted. Teachers shall prepare paper copies approximating the content of the online lessons and shall update such by the building principal on a weekly basis. Printed copies of any graded lessons or assignments will be included in the blizzard bags. Students utilizing this option will be granted 1 week from the date after picking them up to return the completed lessons assignments to their assigned building. If the student does not complete the lesson assignment within the time period, the student will receive a failing grade unless the student provides a sufficient reason to the teacher justifying why they failed to complete the lesson assignment. And that was actually adjusting the G as well. I, licensed staff, including intervention specialists, may provide instructional support and related services within the scope of their practice by electronic delivery method or telehealth communication to any district students, including students who receive services under individualized education plans or Section 504 service plans, while the Director of Health's order to close schools to students remains in effect. J, the district intends to meet its obligation to provide all students, including children with disabilities, equal access to curriculum and services during an extended school closure in accordance with state and federal law. Each building will notify parents about who they may contact if students are unable to access or participate in the program remotely because of a disability-related or other reason, so that the district may explore alternative methods of instruction and possible accommodations. Section 2, so circumstances warrant a change in the plan during the 2019-20 school year, this contingency plan may be amended by the superintendent at any time in his or her discretion. Section 3, it is found and determined that all formal action of this board concerning or related to the adoption of this resolution was adopted in an open meeting of the board, and all deliberations of this board that resulted in such formal action were adopted in meetings open to the public in compliance with applicable requirements of the Ohio Revised Code. Okay, I know that was a whole lot, but
That was a lot. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
As a parent of a
No,
district
absolutely.
student.
Second and third.
That was
Yes.
that was good. That was a lot of information.
Yeah.
And if we bring light to the parents to make sure that they understand and this is communicated to our district parents, even the contingencies when they're having issues, to be able to reach out. And even like Steve said in the superintendent's report earlier, they're adjusting work and doing things. I know that there's been a lot of frustration on both sides with so many changes and so many life things going on right now. With this
A whole new world.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Whole
Yes.
new world.
Just like Jasmine and Latin said.
When I reviewed this information, if there's ever a time that we need to appreciate all the things that teachers and administrators and staff have to
Yes.
do, boy, just read this. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing to be in education now, even to be prepared for all of this stuff. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. So hats off to all of the teachers, administrators, and staff and all. Yeah, so much goes into this. I mean, this is uncharted waters and uncharted territories. And I think our folk are just doing an excellent job. And we're trying to, as a board, to get this information out. And this is serious business. This is the future. This is the future of the next couple of years of what our students will be dealing with. Because they're going to be taking care of us down the road here. So we better get them prepared right now.
Right. And thank you to our families too. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second and third.
I want to comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to say too that, you know, it's a great thing. Thank you, administrators, that you are ahead of the game and not behind the 8 ball. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was it. I'll second.
All right. Anyone else? Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Falley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, and then we'll move to page 13, item number 4. Mr. Faulkner, please.
Yes, the Ohio Department of Education certification for Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and the Ohio Principal Evaluation Systems is recommended a resolution listed below regarding the Ohio Department of Education certification for credentials, Ohio Teachers Evaluation System, and Ohio Principals Evaluation evaluators be approved as submitted. And you'll see the names listed for the OTES and OPES below. Congratulations again. We always have people getting qualified for these things, and congratulations to all those persons.
I second.
Okay, any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Falley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Moving on to page 14, item 5, Mrs. Patterson, please.
Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. Benefactors are Mr. and Mrs. Paul Hayes, and they have given to the Lincoln Pre-K through 8 school book bags with an estimated value of $250. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes.
Thank you.
Thank you, as always, to our benefactors. Is there a second, please?
I second.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Falley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. And then we'll move on to page 15, item 6. Mr. Falley, please.
Tuition reimbursement. Is it recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Falley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On to page 16, item 7. Mr. Walker, please.
I thought it was on for the rest of the meeting. No.
Yeah. I
Resolution.
can do that.
No,
I
no,
can give
we're
you a
fine.
reprieve.
Resolution authorizing notification of expiration of administrator contracts and consideration of renewal, non-renewal.
This one's
it is-
just up to submitted.
Gotcha. It is recommended the resolution listed below authorizing written notification to the listed administrators regarding the expiration of their contracts and the board's consideration of the renewal, non-renewal of their contracts be approved as submitted. And we will see those listed below for the identified administrators.
I second.
Thank you. And any questions? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Moving on to page 18, item 8. Mr. Faulkner, please.
Personnel recommendations, recommend the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through H be approved as submitted. Do we have, let's see.
We do have one retirement on page 20.
Yeah, we have a retirement, want to congratulate the new retiree that's listed on page 20.
It actually goes on to page 21.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you say his name.
Yeah, that's, okay, that's pretty much it. We want to thank them and congratulate them and wish them well in the future.
Yes, thank Mr. Lucas for his years of service with the district. And enjoy your retirement. Well deserved.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And that takes us through to page 22. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, we don't have anything under board recommendations. We have no need to move into executive session. So at this time, I'm going to call the meeting for adjournment. And the time is now 6:44. And I'll
Also
tap out.
move.
Do I have a motion?
I
I
motion.
motion it.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All right, go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for joining us remotely. This is a whole new world for us, too. A lot of people on the screen. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be here with us. All right?
Thank you, guys.
Be safe, wash your hands, social distance, wear your masks.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you.
Good night.